Welcome to Terms of Service. I'm CNN tech reporter Claire Duffy. Have you ever thought about what it might be like to live forever? Well, there's a growing group of people, many of them in Silicon Valley, who have been thinking a lot about that vision over the past few years and trying to make it a reality. The longevity movement has gained traction and attention online, with prominent boosters advocating everything from good sleep and supplements to experimental and sometimes extreme biohacking treatments. Today, I am going to be joined by legendary tech journalist and CNN contributor Kara Swisher, who also hosts the podcasts On and Pivot. She has spent the last few months digging into the longevity space and testing out treatments to figure out what's real and what's snake oil.
If I had to say, everyone's like, what's the number one hack of longevity? I'm like, don't be poor. Be rich.
Yeah.
Be rich. That will work.
She's also been interviewing people like Brian Johnson, who has gotten a lot of attention for his attempts to defy aging, taking dozens of supplements every day, religiously tracking even his most intimate bodily functions, and at one point, even getting a plasma transfusion from his son. All of that costs him around $2 million a year.
And I'm saying that the primary thing that we want to do is to say, like, let's just not die.
So why do you phrase it like that? Because it is phrased and you market it, and it's quite marketed, I want to live forever.
Oh, I don't. I specifically do not say, I want to live forever.
Okay, but you said you don't want to die.
Kara has a new documentary series airing on CNN and CNN All Access called Kara Swisher Wants to Live Forever, for which she was the host and an executive producer. My conversation with Kara Swisher after this short break. Well, Kara Swisher, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Your beautiful place.
Oh,
this is so
thank
lovely.
you. So what drove you to investigate this space and to try out so many of these longevity treatments for yourself?
You know, broadly, it's about tech, which I've been covering since the dawn of time. I've looked at social media. I've looked at, all manner of devices and stuff like that. And the one area that tech has not been able to sort of unlock is healthcare. And they've tried a number of things in terms of files and vaults and things like that. But what I noticed was a lot of them were getting into funding all these healthcare companies, but it was around living longer and longevity. And the language sort of started to shift as they got wealthier and wealthier about living forever. And so Larry Ellison started an anti-aging institute in Los Angeles. There were investors by Sam Altman, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and they were really interested in it. And a lot of the focus has been on rockets and stuff like that, which is sort of a side version of let's go across the planet and live planets and live in another planet. And so this idea of what they were trying to do, it was life extension, really. And then there was, of course, Brian Johnson, who's made a son of a spectacle of himself. For good or bad for him, I don't know, we'll see, in terms of trying to do everything and sort of monitor it. And then the last thing is they love data. And the human body is lots of things, but it's also a lot of data. And so whether it's wearables or the Oura Ring or whatever it happens to be. But a lot of the data is meaningless, really, and is not helping the broad group of Americans or anywhere across the globe.
How do you personally feel about death? Is it something that you think about?
I do think about it a lot. My dad died when I was 5, and so it was always been with me. I had an encounter with it very early, and anyone who is like that does have that awareness. And I then was further kind of inspired by Steve Jobs, who died youngish for him, who gave a speech at Stanford talking about how death was his motivation in terms of creation and innovation. And I think he was right. And what it morphed into is I desperately don't want to die. And FYI, everyone on this planet who's been here has.
Right. We're all going that way.
Everybody. And so for some reason, we sort of try to avoid it. And death avoidance is actually not very healthy. Many world religions talk a lot about death acceptance. And I'm not talking about obsession. It's that it's about talking about how you want to live, in a lot of ways. And instead, we try to pretend it's not happening. And it is.
So give us sort of like the definition of what this longevity trend is. It sounds like it's sort of an offshoot of the wellness trend that we've seen grow over the past few years.
Yes, the wellness trend is, and that's been sort of amplified and even weaponized by social media, right? There's all these wellness grifters who are telling you things that are not true. Either they're not true or they overstate them, but they're always trying to sell a product. And, people look at them and there's a great hope in humanity. It's like, if I only had this elixir, it's gone way back Ponce de Leon, Fountain of Youth. Way back in Chinese dynasties, they were always searching for the elixir. Obviously, the vampire myths. There's Frankenstein. There's all manner of things that we tell ourselves in some way to cope with death, which is inevitable. But it's been all around us. But now it's become amplified and sort of made into a product. And they're selling health back to us.
How much of that is because the American healthcare system kind of sucks and people are looking for some way to have control?
You don't see this as much elsewhere, right? This idea of, look, we pay, I think it's now $15,000 a year per capita on healthcare. And our outcomes are at the very bottom of every list, whether it's infant mortality, whether it's obesity, whether it's length of life and everything else. And so you're like, what are we getting for our money? Very little. And it's wasted. And there's a real sick care. People talk about healthcare. It's a sick care system where all of it gets piled at the end. Unnecessary things that we do because we don't do preventative health, the way we eat. There's all manner of reasons why it is, but we really do not value the health of our citizens. And look, we can go on and guilt people into it, but it costs money. Like, let's focus on our greed. Like, we are wasting money in terms of being sick when we could do something very early on to mitigate what is inevitably going to happen. And, there's a lot said about health span versus lifespan. The delta is so huge in this country. Why is it so huge? Why do we spend the last 10, 15 years of our life being sick?
Yeah, I thought that health span idea was so interesting from the show.
It's been around for a while,
I do think, I think I know so many people who think about, I want to exercise when I'm young so that I can be mobile when I'm older.
That's absolutely critical. It is.
Then these guys take it to a completely different level.
Of course they do, because they can sell you a supplement. They can sell you a vest. They can show you, oh, I have a program. Every one of them always ends up with a program. And look, I don't mind people making money off of their businesses, and that's fine. I think what it is it plays into people's insecurities. And, oddly enough, men, like everyone's like, oh, women are so beauty conscious. No. Look online. It's the men that are doing it. I have so many people come up to me. I'm protein maxing. I'm like, please stop, because what they're telling you is not accurate.
You mentioned some of the guys near the top, but talk about some of the prominent figures in this space, especially Brian Johnson.
Yeah,
who they are, and do they actually think that they are going to cheat death? Do they really believe that?
No, he's played a lot of word games. His whole motto is "Don't die," but he doesn't want to live forever. I'm like, okay. He's talking about humanity not dying. I'm like, I think what he's talking about is he's desperately scared of dying and desperately scared of degrading. And he came to my conference before this all started and talked about brain health. And one of the motivators around brain health was his own depression, which is a debilitating problem for a lot of people. But then it morphed into this, which is obviously, no matter how you slice it, and he's aware of it too, and he says it. He's like, I know people think I'm this narcissistic, Patrick Bateman style motherfucker. And I'm like, indeed, that's exactly what they think, or you're a vampire. So he's aware of it.
And so much of it does feel like it's about the aesthetics.
Of course, and it's weird aesthetics. It's like people who like obsessively do facelifts, and then you're like, what are you doing to yourself? And of course, it's a journey of one. Has no application to the rest of us. He's like, oh, I'm opening the source. I go, what's going on with your pee has nothing to do with anybody else's pee. And you need to do these gold standard studies around a lot of things with a lot of people. And that's the problem. It's a study of one. So now we can know how Brian Johnson lives better, but it has no application to Kara Swisher or you or anybody else.
How big is the longevity industry? How much money are
billions,
people making?
Hundreds of billions. It's getting bigger and bigger. It's only growing. Like even just a small area, and I should have the numbers at my fingertips, but like red light, huge growth. Not sure it works. They're selling blankets, they're selling beds, everything from $60 to $70,000. No sign. I mean, these people are going to come at me. The red light people will come with red lights at me, but there's some applications, there's some possibilities of inflammation. They certainly are experimenting with brain surgery. Okay, let's look at it. Let's figure it out. What does work? And I think that's what happens for centuries with diets. There's been like, oh, we must have mercury. It's so good for you. Oh, no, it isn't, right? And so that's the thing is there's always been sort of a solution. And At one point there was a countess in, I think, Romania that would bathe in the blood of virgins to get younger. I'm like,
Now people are injecting salmon sperm.
that's right,
into
or
their
whatever it
face.
happens to be. But it's against the backdrop of astonishing medical developments that we should be paying attention to, whether it's GLP-1s, whether it's mRNA technology. So politicized, such a shame what's happening here. These are really astonishing things. Gene editing, how should we conduct it? Eradicating diseases. And so you have a lot of Silicon Valley people, one, talking about their own lives, and at the same time, we're going to eradicate all diseases. And I put my hand up, I'm like, okay, how? Where is it? What's happening? Tell us. Let's know. And so that's what I wanted to go on a journey to find too.
For her documentary, Kara tested out a range of treatments promoted for wellness or longevity, ranging from sound therapy and ketamine therapy to sitting in hyperbaric oxygen chambers and a red light bed and staying in a hotel room optimized for excellent sleep.
Some of it is okay. Some of it's very expensive. I mean, I think that's the knock on a lot of this stuff, is that only rich people can afford it. And some of it's kind of silly and maybe not very good for you, right? That kind of stuff, or has very little effect. And like one of them that I did was just a hyperbaric chamber.
Right.
And again, the hyperbaric chambers are going to come after me.
Oxygen, high pressure.
Well, if oxygen's good, double the oxygen is better. Like, is it? It's not. Like, and so I feel better. I feel better after I come up from a trip. I was like, okay, like.
Oh, yeah, the ketamine.
Ketamine is another one.
Therapy.
Like, actually, there is incredible, interesting stuff happening. We should do more studies about the good effects of psychedelic drugs to replace SSRIs. Great idea. Let's figure out how to do it. But let's have proof before we put clinics all over the country that are not regulated.
The longevity industry isn't just pushing new supplements and gadgets. There's also growing talk of extending our presence here on Earth with the help of artificial intelligence. Kara and I will talk about what that next frontier could mean for humanity. And Kara will also offer her advice on what actually works to live a longer, healthier life. That's after the break. So much of this seems to involve so much tracking in a way that I'm like, does that not make you crazy?
Yes. I think a lot of, when wearables, they're called wearables a long time ago, and I've tried them all. I've been there since the dawn of time of wearables. I call them unwearables. I'm like, what's 10,000 steps? Okay. Which steps? Where? When? Right? That kind of stuff. It never gives you information that's actual. It just tells you the number. And so one of the things that Silicon Valley especially is interested in isn't just numbers, but what's the meaning of the numbers, right? You can give me any number, but it doesn't matter. And so I would like, if I was, this is just me like deciding to create something, you have a wearable. If they want to embed it. And it has a lot of information about you. And that's kind of interesting. Okay, you eat a donut. It then says to you, oh man, you just ate a donut. Here's what you need to do. You need to get up and walk right now because your blood sugar is spiking or whatever's happening. And then get some celery immediately. Or whatever it is you need to get, it needs to tell you. And then it explains to you, like, this is what the donut did to you. And that would, in plain English, that would be really interesting, wouldn't it? Like, or it feels indulgent, but actually it could be it could be used across a population where it's like, okay, you're doing this. Here's what's in it. Here's what's happening. Here's what it does to you individually, because everyone has their own individual reaction to different things. And that's another thing. People get too much information.
Right.
And then start to take action. Like if you do a full body MRI, you have a polyp. Oh, take it out, but it's a benign polyp. Do not do surgery, right? So once you start to know what is the usefulness of this information, I'm not saying keep it from you, but knowing it could lead to things you don't want to have happen.
There's also this other way that people are talking about extending their life, which is to make an AI replica of their personality, their consciousness that could live on after death.
Yeah.
What do you think about that trend?
It's nuts right now. Now, what's interesting is there's just a story. Sam Altman wants to do this, like figure out what's it. It's an idea of what the soul is, right? Is there a soul? They look at brains as if they're computers. Computers wish they were like brains. And so I think some of the stuff could be super promising, and then they take it to that extreme. And so I did a Karatar, an avatar, and loaded it up with all manner of information. And what's changed is they used to just tape people, and then it would have stock answers to whatever you taped. now it can have a discussion with you and then learns over time. And it was interesting. I'm probably going to have to kill it. But
Did you feel like it was an accurate representation of
no,
you?
but it was. It's a facsimile. It's certainly a facsimile, but it's not the real thing. The question is, would I want my great-grandchildren to meet that? Maybe. I don't know. Would I? Because it's not me. And it's not, then it starts to become another version of me.
Right.
So then
Something else.
When it runs out of material because I'm dead, what does it become? It becomes another creature, right? Or something. But it was a really interesting discussion because I was like, well, what's wrong with me? I said, first of all, you don't smile very much and you don't tell good jokes. But by the end of the conversation, it told a pretty good joke. Pretty good. Not great, but good. And they said, why do you think I'm not you? And I said, well, you lack empathy and you lack humanity and experience. And you're just what motivates you is an algorithm. And the creature essentially said, yeah, my soul is the algorithm.
Yeah.
And
well,
so
it makes you wonder, would we stop valuing the time that we have
Right.
with our real loved ones? Because you're like,
Right.
oh, I know I'll have this AI thing to interact
Right,
with
exactly.
later.
I mean, you could imagine a cemetery in the future not being stone, but little avatars that you just talk to these people. But why not?
Yeah.
Why not have these 3D figures, holograms? You've seen Star Wars pop up, and there you are. And it's a facsimile of you. And I really was fascinated by how quickly it learned. It did. And it wasn't because it was sentient. It was figuring and pattern matching and doing all manner of things. And I have to tell you, it was a more interesting discussion that I've had with lots of people. But we had a parting of the ways.
Throughout the series, you dig into the motivations of these people who are invested in longevity. There's this point in the first episode where you play a clip of Jeff Bezos being interviewed on stage, and he's asked what he wants his legacy to be, and he says, "World's oldest man," which
World's
is
oldest man.
Cringe.
Jeff
you have
Bezos
so
is a
many
walking
resources,
cringe. Yeah,
and yet that is the thing.
Of course.
You've created this incredible business.
right.
What did you learn from your reporting about what is behind this? And what did they say in response to that
I didn't
critique of
interview Bezos,
narcissism?
but and I should have interviewed Larry Ellison because he's the one that's been very much behind some of this and is doing some really significant, interesting investments in this area. But it's the old Carly Simon song. You're so vain, you probably think the song is about you. That's the thing. It's like so self-regarding, and in some cases, they think they should go on because they're so special compared to the rest of us. I don't know what their motivation is, but it's certainly not. If Jeff Bezos really cared about humanity or everybody else's length of life, maybe he'd act like his ex-wife.
Right.
She just gave $70 million to Meals on Wheels. That's going to help.
Feed
by the way,
everybody. Yes.
guess what? That's a health outcome for people. She gives money where there are health outcomes to people in the now and in the here. They are not thinking of that. If he really cared, he might do something different.
Yeah. Are there any longevity treatments that you found really work or that you've incorporated into your routine?
Yes. It depends on where you want to go. Sleep, diet, all those things are important. I think interval training, for example, VO2 max, I found really interesting. Obviously, for this woman I interviewed, GLP-1s were very good when combined with exercise. I think taking your vaccines. I'm sorry, people. You're going to have to write me angry notes, but it's true. I think some of the stuff, like fermented foods, that's a really important thing. Not as much animal proteins. I like a burger. I do. That's the way it is. Not 6 of them a week kind of stuff. Use the protein, find proteins in other ways. That's food and diet and sleep. Get enough sleep. You don't have to obsess on it, but understand the importance of sleep for regeneration. But really, it's very small things, and I think the most is friends and family. Yeah. That's really where the rubber hits the road. And I interviewed just near here in Brooklyn. I spent the evening with a brain scientist, a very well-known brain scientist, and we played games with a bunch of 20-year-olds. And they put down their phones. They played games with each other.
That's lovely.
First of all, they met people they didn't know, which is also good for brain cognition. They played games, which is good for your brain. They touched things, and they had interactions. And she was explaining what was happening with cortisol and dopamine and everything else.
Interesting.
And it's all good. It's everything about that was good. The other day, I started to play mahjong because it's interesting, and it's actually it's sort of on trend right now. It's always been popular, but in certain parts of the world, but it's sort of the pickleball of this year, I guess. And I brought together 16 people most of whom I knew them, but they didn't know each other. The end of the evening, to a person, they're like, I feel better. I'm like, you actually do. Like,
Right.
it's not just because it's fun. It's something else is happening here. I interviewed Zeke Emanuel, who wrote Eat Your Ice Cream. And one thing he does is different things because it's good for cognition. And he learned to make honey. He makes delicious honey. He's a cancer specialist. He learned to make honey. He's doing ballroom dancing right now. Anything that's different and unusual. And then the last thing is death acceptance. I interviewed a professor at Skidmore who's doing a study on death acceptance versus death fear, and finding that the more you do accept it, the happier you are. It has all kinds of knock-on effects, and happiness has a lot of knock-on effects on health. And then I interviewed the head of the Harvard Happiness Study, same thing. They have absolute proof that the people that live longer are social, have social connections with other human beings, not with bots or robots or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
Nothing, I like a robot, but
Right.
And
Well, it's
then-
amazing how much all of that is very low tech things that we
It
have
is
known for a
because
long
you can't
time.
sell it to you. You can't. They can't sell you today. Try to do Whole Foods. And the last thing is, I went to Korea, which is one of the longest living populations. They've got lots of problems in Korea, but one of the things they do have is women in Korea right now will be the longest living people on the planet very soon. Why is that? There's lots of reasons. Early nutrition stuff in schools. We went to a school. A lot of community stuff. They have an aging population, so they're doing a lot of robotic stuff. And I went to Robot Valley there, and there's all this ectoskeleton stuff they're working on when combined with AI. It's really interesting. Could people in wheelchairs, which is bad for your health, be able to walk? Yes. Like, that's cool. That's really interesting. And that's really high tech. So it's not that I don't like tech. It's that how are we going to apply it for the broadest amount of people at the cost that we are wasting money right now. Absolutely. Don't buy a red light thing. Go see a friend. Just don't.
Yeah, I love that advice. Don't
I'm
buy
not
red
against red
go
light.
see a
There's some
friend.
science in space with wound healing. Hyperbaric chamber is another thing. Like, again, if you have the bends, go for it. Absolutely. Climb yourself into that hyperbaric chamber. If you have wounds, good idea. It's just a question of taking something and then applying it in ways that just don't have provable benefits.
Well, Kara Swisher, thank you
you.
so much for doing this. I
Thanks
really
very
appreciate
much.
it.
I hope you live long and
Thank
prosper.
you. You too. No one has yet figured out how to cheat death, and there's currently no indication they will anytime soon. But it's normal to want to live a long and healthy life. And as Kara said, acknowledging death can actually make you appreciate the time you have even more. Despite the recent uptake in interest and investment in longevity from Silicon Valley, the proven methods of extending your life and improving your health are pretty low tech. Things like eating a balanced diet, sleeping well, exercising regularly, challenging your brain by learning new things, and prioritizing time spent with loved ones. If you have extra cash to spend and want to try out one of the trendier longevity practices, like red light or hyperbaric oxygen therapy, go for it. Even just the practice of relaxing and disconnecting from screens for a bit could help you feel good. Kara says some of these tools could have useful medical applications in certain contexts, although they need more robust testing. But keep in mind that seemingly too good to be true fixes peddled online are often done so with profit in mind, not your health. And make sure to talk to your doctor about any new treatments you're trying. Kara's documentary series is called Kara Swisher Wants to Live Forever. Episodes air on Saturdays at 9 p.m., or you can stream them on CNN All Access. That's it for this week's episode of Terms of Service. I'm Claire Duffy. Talk to you next week.